Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I would like to talk about how that there is a need for us to how there is a need for us to resolve conflicts that are there within us as a result of our experiences with life and with people, and then maybe building up to talking about our thinking about God and relationship with God. If not today, then inshallah in our next session. So looking at my own self internally, and of course, then seeing people who are disputing with each other, and more than often, couples who just cannot get along with each other, and they have a lot of pent up anger, resentment, and grievances towards each other. On the insights that one gains from there, I would like to share that it does appear that as individuals, we are totally imprisoned. We are not really free. We are not breathing a breath of a free soul, and we are not living a proper life. And our thinking as well is skewed. We are not thinking accurately. We are caught up in a maze and we just don't know how to get out because our way of thinking just does not allow it. So let us give an example. I often find couples coming to me complaining about each other. The marriage is on the verge of a breakdown. Now, to complicate things, they also have a child, let us say, or children. Now, their whole idea is that, well, we need to be amicable about this, civilized about this. We need to have a relationship for the sake of the child, or we need to work it, or we need to work at the relationship for the sake of the children. Now, think about this. This will not resolve the problem. The real problem is within the hearts and the minds of the two people. But they want to make it work for the sake of their child. Either stay together for the sake of the children or to be civilized about the whole process for the sake of the children. The interesting thing that comes through the whole conversation is that they talk ill about each other. So I always ask them, I said, well, how long did you date for before you got married? And more than often, because this is the younger generation, the couple have known each other for a number of years or months. I said, where were all these grievances and personality traits at that point? Did you not see these flaws in each other at that point? So they would say, interesting. Even if we saw them, we found them endearing. We did not think much about them. They all crept in afterwards. And I said, ever since things started going wrong, have things ever been the same? And they would say, no, ever since that year, when things started going wrong, they have never been the same. And I said, then in that case, has every one of your interactions subsequent to that been somehow based on that particular patch of time when things started going wrong? And they would say, yes. So I said, is it possible that we are maybe stuck somewhere there, that we are stuck there? And as a result of that bitter experience that you experienced with each other and that's continued all this time, is it possible that it is not allowing you to think before that time? And it is not allowing you to interact genuinely after that time. And as opposed to that, it is just compounding the problem constantly. And they would say, yes. I said, well, think about it this way. You have got issues within yourself, within yourselves that are impacting you, that are influencing every decision of yours, every interaction of yours, your attitude towards each other, and attitude to others. Surely that says that there's a problem inside there that needs to be resolved. Your child should not be the one for whose sake you resolve your differences. You need to resolve your inner state in order to free yourself so that you can move on with life. You are stuck in a place. You need to introspect. What we tend to do is, it's a very simple sort of analogy that I give. we have a headache, and we keep on taking painkillers. But the painkillers treat the symptom. The real cause may be that there is lack of sleep or stress from other sources, or God forbid, there's a tumor. It needs to be addressed directly. You can't go to a counselor or a Molana who sugarcoats things for you or who asks you to mend your ways because of somebody extraneous to both of you, like a child or the hereafter or God. It has to be acknowledged that there's a problem within the soul. And as a result, we have been caught up in a particular place. We need to look deeply into that problem and then resolve it. Why am I so offended? What has gone wrong inside there? Why can't I see the other human being for what they are? Why is that thought influencing what I am seeing? Why is it constantly fueling this frustration? What has gone wrong inside there in order to free myself? So I always ask them, I say, well, look, 20 years from now, because they're often very young, when you look back, would you say to yourself that I now have a different perspective, a far more mature, a wiser perspective? Looking back, I wish I would have done things differently. Those things that were unbearable at that time, at this point in time, seem very trivial. I have ended up doing so much wrong to myself and to the other and to people who were connected. I wish I would have done things differently. Then I think to myself, at my point of death, will I think to myself, I wish I would have done things differently? People were not really bad, they were not really evil. It was my perspective. It wasn't even a question of tolerating them. It was a question of embracing them, loving them, being compassionate. The real problem was inside there. There are unresolved issues inside me. That marriage counseling was just an example for this broader sort of thought that I wanted to get out there. That actually there are problems inside us ourselves, and we are not acknowledging. The Quran says, "Balil insan ala nafsihi basira, walau alqa ma'adira." Rather, insan as a generic insan, the nature of the insan soul, human soul, is such that it is aware of its own truth, even though it has the propensity of putting forth justifications for its own attitudes and actions. But you see, all of this gets cut away at the point where we become enlightened. Now, when we become enlightened, either we are left with a lot of regrets that I could have done so much better than what I have, or we are left with a lot of sorrow because there's no time now to benefit from this wisdom because our time is over. So here is what I want to say, that no, if we want to make good of our lives, we need to introspect, like deeply introspect. The religious piety is one aspect of it, this muraqabah and muhasabah, that we introspect and hold ourselves accountable. But within the religious sense, we say, well, have I entertained an unbefitting thought? Have I done something wrong? What we don't tell each other within the religious sense of piety is that no, it's not about what you're thinking now and what you're doing today. It's about how the soul has been shaped thus far with the impressions that it has received at earlier stage that has made the identity what it is. That identity in itself is a cause of concern. When I look into myself, I really find an imprisoned person. The last 15 years of my life have taught me that everything that I used to see in others and frown upon it, I found that it is all inside me. Every negative aspect that I've ever condemned and looked down upon within the being of another human, God has revealed it through me myself that look, you had it yourself, but yours was concealed to you. Theirs was apparent to you. Now is an opportunity for you to humble yourself and realize that there are these things inside you. You have those mental blocks, you have emotional disheveled state, or you might have a lot of hurt, you have a lot of complexities inside you that are not letting you breathe the breath of a free soul. Free yourself. How can you have these attitudes of like and dislike and hate and resentment and greed and insecurity? If you are from God, then you are as splendid as your God is. You are beyond fear. You are beyond petty enmity. God does not have any enemies. The God explained by religion has been explained in this way for a particular reason, but that is not the status of God. God is too lofty to have enemies. Think about it. Who is Iblis? If you were to compound Iblis 1,000,000,000 times over, he will still be nothing in comparison to God. How can Iblis be so grand that he becomes an enemy of God? God doesn't have time for enemies. God is God. And this, think about this very carefully, what I'm going to say, just to bring home this message. If Hussein can forgive under the sharp edge of the blade his own assassin who sought forgiveness from him at that point that we hear this narration, do you think Hussein's God is going to have Shaitan as an enemy? God is beyond such concerns. He doesn't have these sort of trivial likes and dislikes as we have. He is beauty and in its entirety. If we are the breath of God or breath attributed to God, then our true status is a status of unlimited splendor and beauty. But our status right now in the name of God is one of a captivated soul. And our captivity is not imposed upon us through external means, it's internal captivity. And that's the most difficult one to break. You see, if you were to see shackles on our wrists binding our hands, we can say, yes, this is what captivates my body. But this is willful captivation of the mind that we are in. We are not freeing ourselves. We are not addressing those problems that are within us. We do not either know how to, or we do not have the courage to do so. To be open, to be frank about it, to be transparent with it with our God, and to break the inner shackles. Say, oh Allah, now take me home again. Tired of this world, tired of my own self. You see, when a soul arrives at that point of realization, it does not want this world anymore. It wants to go back home. Enough of this prison, enough of this captivity. The Blessed Prophet, and we read this in history, delivered his message. And Jibreel came to him, Salamullah alayhi, and said, oh, dear Prophet, you have conveyed on behalf of your God. The choice is yours. Would you like to continue to stay in this world? Or would you like to come back to your Lord? He said, Gabriel, take me away. Take me back to where I belong. The Prophet, after delivering his farewell sermon, came back to Medina, and he said this to his family, that I have chosen to return. They lamented, and they said, dear Prophet, could you not have stayed for our sake? We are your family. You will leave us with broken hearts? The Prophet said, I choose to be with my beloved. I need to go back home. So such is our state. We need to break these inner shackles by addressing these problems and see what is that sticking point that is not letting us move. Once we liberate ourselves, nothing will be more pleasurable than going back home. There remains no fear, there remains no anxiety, there remains no regret. There is but gratitude to God. Thank you for allowing me to experience this world of yours and to experience the great longing and yearning for my homecoming. I'm going to stop there for today.
Thank you, Shaykh. That was really beautiful. If anybody has any questions, they can use the raise hand function or they can message me. Sheikh, somebody has messaged me. Wait, let me just read it. Sorry. Um, how to how does one learn to surrender?
So, rather than conceptualizing these things, we can take easy steps. One is that when something wrong or bad happens to us, that we stop complaining about it. When something good comes upon us, to stop ourselves from rejoicing. Instead of both of these, we offer gratitude to God and say to Allah, this bad that has happened to me, it has been decreed by you. Allow me to embrace it and give thanks to you. When something good happens, we say to Allah, I am not worthy within myself. Allow me to be grateful to you. To start off with this small, small practice. When somebody offends us, to not to think about it, to not to internalize it, to not to feel it. Let it go. And if we do think about it and we do internalize it, then quickly we become mindful and let the thought pass and not engage with that thought. The Prophet was asked, and this is something I found very effective. The Prophet was asked by Sahaba, and they were very genuine people. Thousands died and buried in Baqi in the lifetime of the Prophet. They were good people. We get good and bad in every community, but by and large, these were good people. They said, we've got uncountable amount of sins. What are we to do? The Prophet said, extend your prostrations, for nothing wipes out sins more swiftly than prostration. Now, you will find that sin is not an act per se. It is the aptitude and it's the impression that falls upon the soul and the negative aptitudes of the soul through the act. That is sin. Yeah. Otherwise, a child can break a glass, steal something. It's not considered a crime or a sin. But when we do the same, it's considered a sin because we do it with that intention, knowing that this is wrong. So sin is internal. Outer is a mere expression. When we do sajda, actually something physiological impacts something psychological. It calms the mind by calming the physical brain. And as the mind is calmed, these negative impressions begin to fade away. And that, I believe, is what the Prophet was saying, is the cleansing of the sin. That as the soul begins to free itself of these impressions and its sort of propensities to wrong is mellowed down or neutralized, that is the expression of forgiveness of sin. So, with these exercises, hopefully, our surrender to the beautiful God will come of age.
Thank you, Sheikh. I'm not sure if this is related, but I got a question saying mind-blowing talk. Where do we start when it comes to liberating ourselves?
So, obviously, the first thing is sit down in a quiet place, be alone with your thoughts, recount all the offenses we are carrying upon our souls. We are thinking through all the people that we hate, one by one, say to Allah, oh Lord, in front of you, I forgive this person. In front of you, I'm going to let go of this offense and this hurt. Start like that. That's the best way of liberating. You see, greed for money and everything is not as dangerous as these grievances that we carry within our souls and hatreds and resentments. Let that go. Once that goes, that's the mother of all evil. The rest falls in place.